Round up the Muslims. This week, I received numerous messages, DMs, sending me below the grotesque message from Laura Loomer, a notorious anti-Muslim bigot and close advisor and ally of Donald Trump. And this is what I posted the other day. What's the name of the shooter in Austin, she asks, on X? If it's a Muslim, I want to see the Trump administration go to war with Islam. These people need to be forcibly removed from our country by ICE. I also want to say that one of the articles that I saw in MSN reported on news of some guy who took a hatchet to some ethnic person. And in the comments, they want to know what the race was of the person that was chopped up before they showed sympathy. The Christian army against Iran. This one is important. And like I was already getting the intuitive feeling like they're creating a spirituality out of killing people. And then now this, I get the validation, the confirmation of what I was thinking about intuitively in the actual news. The Christian army against Iran, the so-called Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has made clear that his role is not to lead the military of a democratic republic to uphold the Constitution, but to advance Christian nationalism, American supremacy against Islam. As he writes in his book, American Crusade, I realized that perhaps my planetary purpose was to proactively, politically, and then militarily destroy Islamist radicals, feeding a well-oiled killing machine. Now that's my jam. He further went on record declaring, Islam itself is not compatible with Western forms of government. Some countries want to stay free, so they are fighting like hell to block Islam's spread. In this age, it's incredibly difficult to remain clear-headed about the fact that some ideas for society are better than others, and that is where the real fight lives. And while I can offer many more examples of his unhinged fascism, I share finally his deceitful statement that millions of Muslims have joined the modern world and have chosen to live peacefully, but they do so disregarding intolerant and violent Quranic passages that are no less authoritative today than they were 1,000 years ago. Islamists choose to interpret the Quran as it is written, not as they choose to see it today. In the military, the attitude is a reflection of leadership. It is no surprise, therefore, that watchdog groups are filing complaints against his military, Hegseth's military, due to military leaders pushing claims of Armageddon and Trump appointed by God. I mean, that's pretty serious. And that makes me think about some, not all, but some New Agers that were putting out that message also on the internet. Many people on the internet acting like they were under possession in 2015 and 16 with the rise of Trump, like he was their messiah, right? So this complaint made by the nonprofit organization called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation reads in part, I actually interviewed a person 15 years ago from that organization, actually. This morning, our commander opened up the combat readiness status briefing by urging us not to be afraid as to what is happening with our combat operations in Iran right now. He urged us to tell our troops that this is all part of God's divine plan and that he specifically referenced numerous citations out of the book of Revelation, referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. He said that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and his return to earth. He had a big grin on his face when he said all of this, which made his message seem even more crazy. Our commander would probably be described as a Christian first supporter. This vile anti-Muslim hate is also bred into U.S. politics with MAGA members of Congress dehumanizing Muslims as less than dogs and calling for Muslim members of Congress to be deported. Anti-Muslim hate in Congress. It is not limited to social media provocateurs or fringe backbenchers. Congressman Brandon Gill has openly called for an outright ban on Islamic immigration, declaring that bringing Muslims to America is idiotic and suicidal, and insists that Muslim communities are assimilatable and incompatible with American society. Okay. So yes, we have Randy Fine here. Dehumanizing Muslims is less than dogs. And that's traumatizing on more ways than I'm actually going to get into in a society that I've noticed people treating dogs better than me personally, especially like the women in Portland and people in general. Like there's a lot of trauma there and actually already coming to that awareness in a different way, independently. So this on top of that is difficult, and the lack of empathy. And why the lack of empathy? I asked recently Google Gemini, why is there lack of empathy with regards to certain groups out there, spiritual groups out there, people that purport to be spiritual in this society? And I have the Google Gemini response down below. And so, yeah, this is the time in which I'm going to have to be okay walking alone and living in this place that I'm living in. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. But this is a place in which I'm sensitive to the hate from others. Going back to the blog, when a presidential advisor calls to round up the Muslims, and keep in mind, I can feel their thoughts agreeing with that sentiment. And then you also got to ask yourself, how do they define a Muslim? And you need to understand that it clearly isn't them, someone necessarily being of the religion of Islam. You should know that by now. You should know that by now, that it's used to dehumanize a wider swath or group of people. This is my new megaphone. Last megaphone was stolen from me by the cops. This just arrived in the mail. It's brand new. When all this happens, it's not politics as usual. That is Christian nationalism weaponized through state power. History teaches us that dehumanization is always the precursor to violence. And that is the most important part of this blog, of this article, of the message that I've been sharing with you. And it's ultimately what I said about the governor of Texas through his labeling CAIR, C-A-I-R, Council for American Islamic Relations, a terrorist organization without proper evidence, right? It was something that I interpreted as something that in which he's signaling for people to go out and commit acts of violence. Vigilante justice, basically. Saying things that would result in other people being harmed. That's the reality of the situation. It is their belief that Muslim lives are disposable, that they don't matter, and that God has authorized their destruction. And that's the next major significant revelation of what he's talking about, that God has authorized their destruction. That to them moving forward, it will be a spiritual act, that they would be serving God in their eyes if they were to harm Muslims. Or you can even say those perceived to be Muslims, whether it be here or there or here. You know, you combine that with the video games they put out for years. You combine that with the other content they put out there for years, and what's in the media for years, and the website that's out there. Like, this is all coordinated. The only way authoritarianism advances is if good people convince themselves it can't happen here. It can. And that's precisely why we must act collectively and relentlessly to stop it. Clerics' fatwa to avenge the dead ruler in Iran prompts fears of sleeper cell and lone wolf attacks. Google Gemini pushed lovesick man to plot catastrophic airport truck bombing, then kill himself. Now, I've been warning about AI, right? AI bots and AI partners for a while. Telling people to go out and harm and kill others. And it looks like that's more validation of my concern, right? That we're going to see AI chatbots telling people to go out, commit acts of terror, to harm others, to go after certain people. And there's more that I can say about data centers. I think I started to talk about that now. There's something about like the attack on the soul beyond this world where they attempt to animate spirits through technology involving data centers. That's a bit far out, and we'll come back to it later. We're going to conclude now with the unthinkable is imminent, why I believe a radiological false flag is being prepared for American soil. March 4th, 2026, Mike Adams, the Health Rangers newsletter. At one point, he supported Trump, and at one point, he woke up, and he's been warning about these camps being death camps, saying that there are incinerators in them. I haven't placed a lot of emphasis on that in this blog, but it's something that Secular Talk has also talked about, and is not a conspiracy theorist. He considers himself anti-conspiracy theory on the left in support of the Democrats, yet, folks, we've got to see how our concerns are coming together, meshing together, and like move beyond like the invisible like boundaries that divide us. A warning based on patterns, not paranoia. I am writing this not as a doomer, but as someone who has spent decades investigating the hidden hands that shape our world. The evidence I have compiled from historical records to current geological maneuvers points to a chilling conclusion. Elements within the globalist power structure may be actively preparing a catastrophic false flag on American soil. The goal is to manufacture the emotional fury necessary to launch a genocidal ground invasion against Iran in order to appease Zionist Israel. All right. Why I'm convinced. A pattern too clear to ignore. History provides the most damning evidence. The 1967 attack on the USS Liberty, a U.S. Navy intelligence ship by Israeli forces, is the textbook case. Israel claimed it was an accident, but surviving crew members insisted it was deliberate, premeditated assault. The cover-up was immediate and comprehensive, with hearings held in closed sessions and survivors subjected to gag orders. The lesson has been applied repeatedly. Okay, now I'm actually going to skip a lot of this historical information. The logic of escalation, why 9/11 wouldn't be enough today. The psychological landscape has changed. The trauma of 9/11, which killed nearly 3,000 people, cannot be replicated in today's media-saturated, trauma-numb society. We have lived through decades of war, an engineered pandemic, and constant fear propaganda. The public's threshold for shock is far higher. In my assessment, the Zionist calculus has been adopted. They now believe they need an event causing not thousands, but tens of thousands of American deaths to generate the required level of blind, uniting fury, right? And notice that the word fury is involved in this Operation Fury. Fury, anger, rage, solar flares, solar maximum, planetary alignment of February 28th, and I had a suspicion that this attack would occur on the 28th of February during the planetary alignment when there's an increase in hatred, in aggression. It all relates to the solar influence over wars and peace, and that's what we're going through. This grim arithmetic points directly to a radiological and nuclear event. Only such an upgrade, a dirty bomb, rendering a city district uninhabitable, or even a low-yield nuclear detonation could produce the existential terror and unanimous demand for vengeance that 9/11 once did. As noted in analysis of potential globalist disruptions, they can orchestrate a false flag event involving nuclear terrorism within an American city, blaming it on Russia or North Korea. Now, recently in a blog, I pointed out Operation Blackjack, a comic strip published by the London Guardian back in 2009 that depicts this type of scenario where an attack, real or imagined, or a false flag, or something to that effect goes down, and then we're into a World War III scenario. What he gets into at this point on is very concerning. The means and method, a nuke in the homeland with permission. Okay, it starts off, Israel possesses 80 to 400 nuclear weapons provided through decades of covert collaboration with a complicit U.S. establishment that turns a blind eye to its own non-proliferation laws.